shit, they started.
Cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump are here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. His supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
The economy is doing great. Wages have been going up. Inflation is at its lowest point that it has been. You just don't feel it because your wages haven't gone up enough. But the stock market, all of it, like technically by the numbers, our economy is doing great.
Passion, one of them, is small businesses. I was actually, my mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent—
No, I'm not comparing it to the COVID lockdowns. I'm comparing it to last year.
Has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year.
Is the tariffs that he doesn't understand how they work. But yes, and in general, it would also. Actually, I'm not sure they're talking about tariffs here. It might just be because the number, the $6,000 a year increase to how much money you are paying as an American citizen, was the number that they were using in result of like the amount of tax credit, the tax cut Trump wants to give to the billionaires.
For middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump will give you 2 minutes.
That's not even
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
Again, this is not how tariffs work.
The tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions.
Guys, when you place a tariff on an import, yes, the country has to pay money to import the product to your country, but then they just raise the price for you as the consumer. You are paying for the tariff, not China.
Billions of dollars from China and other places they've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look,
not true.
We've had a terrible economy because inflation
was the highest under Trump. And yes, that was COVID related, but he can't say I had no inflation. Fuck, I wasn't going to pause this debate, but goddamn, it's clearly going to be one of those ones.
Which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before.
Inflation is at its lowest rate in
probably the
decades.
worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions.
We've covered this on stream just a day ago. A couple days ago, immigrants more often do jobs that American citizens don't want to do. They're not stealing your jobs.
Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio.
We
You look
just
at
talked about
Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest
Kamala,
level of
please call this
criminality,
out. I'm so
and we
sick
have
of
to get them out.
smiling,
We have to
so I
get
think
them
she
out
will.
fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country.
I'm just so sick of hearing the same talking points, and I really need her to call it out.
During this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the
don't do
worst
that.
unemployment since the Great Depression.
Yes,
Donald
but
Trump
directly,
left us the
reply to
worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Yep.
And what we have done is
He still defends the Jan 6 people, calls them hostages, by the way.
clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025
Please address
that the
the
former
things that he
president
said.
intends
Come
on
on.
implementing if he were elected again. I believe very
Open borders is the way to go. Look, I'm just, I don't know, what are you even referring to, anyways? I think you may be behind on the street.
pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
She
Number
didn't
one,
even
I have nothing
respond.
to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to.
Just your VP wrote the forward for it. They're not stealing jobs anyway. But immigration is good. Immigrants increase our economy. Immigrants don't commit nearly as many crimes as American citizens. Even undocumented immigrants still pay taxes because they pay sales tax. They have to eat. They have to buy stuff. And all immigrants, whether they're documented or not, do jobs that most Americans don't want to do. They're also not the ones bringing stuff across. They're not the. No. That's not. That's a. You're making that claim based on the assumption that open borders would just happen. Obviously, we would have to make some greater changes before you can just open the borders of any country. There has to be massive systemic change, and that would include dealing with the way that we deal with drugs. But also, immigrants are not bringing drugs across the country. It is U.S. citizens bring about 94% of drugs across the country. Yes, I did see the Venezuelan gangs in Colorado. One instance of something is not proof enough to make it an issue. We just went over the claim of Ohio, and that was obviously a lie. I didn't look into the Venezuelan thing in Aurora as deeply. We can have a look into it. I'm sure half of it's a lie. I lived in Colorado, literally like one town over from Aurora. I think it was like Cherry Creek or something. I know the area, and Republicans lie. I promise you, the Venezuela shit is not as bad as they made it seem, because obviously the Ohio thing wasn't as bad as it seems. Cool, you're in Texas and you work with them. That's fine. Immigrants are not the ones doing it. They're not committing as many crimes. Statistically, look at the actual math. It's not as bad as they make it out to be. It's not anywhere near as bad. It's not one in. Okay, cats. Please go have a look at the statistics of immigrants, both undocumented and not, and how often they commit crimes, especially violent crimes, and then look at the statistics for U.S. citizens. It is not even a fucking half level, okay? It is just a couple instances that get amplified by the right-wing media because they want you to be thinking about this and making these points. How many people are getting robbed and raped in New York that aren't by immigrants? How many little children are being assaulted? New York has 11 million people in the city. What do you mean? The statistics of crime are based on arrest records. We're talking about law enforcement statistics, not how many are crossing. And we also do know how many are crossing. We have statistics for that as well. Yes, more immigrants came in this year than last year. I don't care about it. It's not a bad thing.
This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad.
Again,
but it makes no
Agenda
difference. I have nothing
47
to do.
that
Everybody
is part of his campaign is exactly Project 2025 with a little wording difference.
knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to
And
do.
J.D.
Cut
Vance wrote
taxes
the
very
book.
substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million.
The credit he's taking for the good economy pre-pandemic was Obama's economy, by the way. It was the first year of his presidency when he was talking about he had a great economy. That was Obama's economy.
People died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic.
Oh,
we
yeah,
handed them
everyone in the
over
world
a
definitely agrees with
country
that.
where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people.
It's not easy for criminals to come through. Anubis, no, it's not common sense. What common sense is that immigrants get deported when they commit crimes, so they commit less crimes. It's not easy to come through the border. It's easy if you're going to claim asylum, but you still have to make it across first, which is the hard part. Migrants have been flooding the criminal justice. You're just full of shit. Send me an actual link, or I don't care. I'm not listening to your quote of what migrants are doing in New York. Send me a link, and I want to see data. They come across in groups. Yes, they do, because it's dangerous and difficult to cross the border.
People give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit.
The FBI, the DEA, the Department of Homeland Security, all of these, look at their actual crime stats. Immigrants commit less crimes. Go watch my last stream. Genuinely, I pulled them all up there.
Credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
How? And again, as if like that still doesn't make a difference to crime in the U.S. Citizens are still committing more crimes. It doesn't matter if a couple criminals are coming through when there's crime being committed in general. Well, yeah, of course. It's hard to get a green card. Do you know how difficult it is to get a green card? I do.
So
you do like one thing wrong on a green card that's not even like a violent crime, and it's instant gone. You can't really get you won't get a green card if you have a criminal history. And again, like I know someone who had a green card that got like caught smoking pot, and their green card was canceled and deported. We should open the border, is what we should do.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And
I want every Mexican to become an American citizen tomorrow. They all get dual citizenship right now.
when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity
Stop
economy.
saying that.
And
Jesus
the
Christ,
best
you're trying to grow
economists
this
in our
debate.
country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans.
You do realize the cartels would be useless if we actually did something about addiction in this country and treated drugs like a healthcare problem and stopped criminalizing them and stopped prohibiting them, because that's what makes the cartels function.
For the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
This is true.
What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You
These are all
just have
true
to
points.
look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say.
She's
Look,
pandering to
I went
the
to the
center
Wharton
here.
School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up
one.
our worth, our
Name one.
value as a country.
one?
It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and
No,
it's
that's
like
true.
4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have
It's
a plan.
not 4 sentences, but yes, it was a majority of Joe Biden's plan. In fact, it blew up on Twitter because people were making fun of her for it. It's really bad. And this is why you don't pander to the center, Kat. This is why pandering. Everything she said so far has been pandering to the center, and it's made me and every other leftist cringe.
Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions.
So is he going to put in regulation that companies can't raise prices equivalent to that of the tariff? No. Again, he has nothing to actually put up forward here. He's just going to lie and make broad, baseless claims like he always does, because no one checks.
Billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are...
Very obvious and clear tactic that right-wingers all across the world are doing, and it's using the economic stress of the pandemic and the global logistics problems that resulted from it by saying that it is directly the fault of the people that were in charge at the time. Hello, Titaza, you're British, you have no idea who's winning. Look, at the moment, it's about head and head, but right now, Kamala Harris is doing pretty shit in this debate. Inflation right now is the lowest that it's been in years, Anubis. Please look it up.
Absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep...
Here you go. 12-month percentage change consumer price index. And also inflation rate. Now you can see that, yes, prices did go up a little bit, and they've all gone down. This is the 12-month. Let's go to the previous 12 months. Oh, sorry, that's not the previous 12 months. God damn it. That's annoying. How about inflation rates? Let's go 5 years. Let's go 10 years. Now you can see that inflation went up during the pandemic and has gone down since. Look at inflation today. Now, of course, going to the grocery store, but my guy, that's not inflation. That's price gouging. That's your wages not going up. It's not inflation. Look at 9 states where they don't ask immigration status when they... What the fuck are you talking about? If you're going to make a claim like that, please provide some evidence for it. If they arrest you and they don't ask your immigration status, that's fine. It's not... You still go to jail. If you commit a federal crime, then they will see it and you will get deported. I don't necessarily think that if you commit a crime and you're an immigrant, that should mean you get deported either. But as you can see, July 2024, the inflation rate is at 2.9%. When was it? When was the election? Here we go. January of December 2021. It went up. Yes, it was because of social policies that were being implemented. And obviously, the world has been incredibly unstable with our shit. Look how it dropped before the pandemic. Sure, because the government wasn't spending enough money. We cut social programs when Trump was president. No shit, inflation went down. But you guys don't understand how economics works. He did do bad on inflation because a lot of the early inflation problems for the pandemic are because we weren't prepared. We didn't have PPE, we didn't have masks, and we had to pay for the production of those. And also, inflation went up everywhere because A, there was the global pandemic messed with global logistics, and also many states, especially America, had to invest quite a lot of money into the pharmaceutical industry to develop vaccines. But inflation went down after COVID, and it is now at 2.9%. Paying more money in the grocery store is not inflation. It's price gouging and it's low wages. And that's the issue. Trump's not going to raise your wages. Kamala Harris isn't either, but she's not going to make it worse for you.
A number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America.
This is also
He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military.
This is true.
Basically sold us out.
Why
when
we
a
put the chips
policy
out.
about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that
stocks are still high now. And again, the stock market isn't even real. It's just hype. I don't care if stocks are high or low. Everyone was freaking out about Nvidia crashing. Look at the Kamala Harris economy like 2 weeks ago. And then the day after, stocks went back up. They're not real.
that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing
Wasn't
on
based on
investing in
anything
American-based
physical.
technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
She's doing so bad here. I don't give a shit about, like, first of all, I don't blame China for COVID. I thought she was going to say, when we know, like, President Xi was incredibly, like, authoritarian and was harsh on the Chinese people during COVID or something like that. This was a stupid point to make.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like
The policies of building chip manufacturing plants and passing the Chip Act, which is already creating hundreds of thousands of jobs as they're manufacturing the plants to bring semiconductor manufacturing and advanced microchip manufacturing to the United States. 96% of the world's advanced microchips are made in Taiwan right now. That's why we have the CHIPS Act. But yes, American companies were selling their chips to China. Just because they're made in Taiwan, doesn't mean that we were buying it from Taiwan. They were American companies.
they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she
This is the
believed
muted
3
mics
years
being
ago
stupid.
and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact,
Anubis, it's not based on trust. Base your stuff on facts, not trust. Don't listen to people. Don't even listen to me. Go look shit up.
I was going to send her a MAGA
Learn.
hat.
Be
She's gone to my
reality.
philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist
fucking wish
professor
she
in
was a
economics. And he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our
If
country,
only.
and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly,
Sorry, I thought you were talking about not stocks, Look, stocks are based on trust and hype. That's kind of it.
where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's
wait, are we
bigger
talking
than
about
New York's
deporting people now?
50 that
Because
are
I have
pouring
a-
into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York
I'm gonna
State
save that for
pouring in.
my,
And
after
just look
debate
at what they're doing to our country.
analysis.
They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals, and that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later.
Again, this is a
well,
lie.
bad immigration
We've
is the
talked
worst
about
thing
it
that can
many
happen
times.
to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support.
Because he doesn't actually believe anything. He'll say anything he wants that he needs to keep his base happy. When he said the 6-week thing, he pissed off his evangelical base, so then he flip-flopped. And that's what he does. He flip-flops all the time that no one actually knows his real position, and everyone believes that he's on their side.
Support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because...
Oh, by the way, by the Department of Justice. This is comparing undocumented immigrants, legal immigrants, and native-born U.S. citizens in Texas from December 2020. The study found that undocumented immigrants have substantially lower crime rates than native-born citizens. Legal immigrants across a range of felony offenses. Related to undocumented migrants, U.S.-born citizens are over 2 times more likely to be arrested for violent crimes, 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes, and over 4 times more likely to be arrested for property crimes. In addition to the proportion of arrests involving undocumented migrants in Texas was relatively stable or decreasing over this period, the difference between U.S.-born citizens and undocumented immigrants are robust using alternative estimates of the broader undocumented population, alternative classifications of those counted as, quote, undocumented at arrest, and substituting misdemeanors or convictions as a measure of crime.
The plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that
Nobody's
predominates.
executing
because
babies.
They're radical.
There are no post-birth abortions. This is, Jesus Christ.
The Democrats are radical in that, and her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also
Never
says
did he say that.
Execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born is okay. That's not okay with me.
Tim Walz has never said this. I don't know where he's getting this from.
Hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states.
No, they haven't.
And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly
Most
in it.
of your
Ronald
party
Reagan
doesn't.
did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first
And most states are enshrining abortion law into their state constitutions.
time,
Even
you're
Republican
going to
ones.
see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought
all
back
he's
to
doing
the
is
states where the
lying.
people could vote. And that's what happened. And now,
Nothing he's
Ohio,
said so far has been true.
The vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is
this.
legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
There is
Well,
not.
as I said-
She just actually called that out, right?
Credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby
Oh, thank
after
God.
it's
A
born.
moderator
Madam
actually
Vice
doing
President, I
their
want to get
job
your
for
response
once.
to President Trump.
Well, as I
Never
said,
seen
you're
that
going to hear a
before.
bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he
Among other
intended.
things.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happened.
Unsurprising from the man who was convicted of sexually assaulting a woman and is a very known Trump friend, sorry, an Epstein friend, rather. The man does not care about rape and incest. He's a rapist. He has raped people. Many of people have come forward about this. It's ridiculous to even just call him a rapist, Kamala. Come on.
Happens
He's
to
been
their body
convicted.
next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country.
The government
You want
shouldn't
to
be
talk
telling
about this
you
is
what
what
to do
people
with your body in general. The government should have no place in regulating how you live your body, like live in your body. What you do with your, as long as you are not harming other people, like out, like, and again, someone's gonna come in here and be like, oh, but like fucking abortions are harming people. It's not. It's not. I don't give a fuck if it's worse or not, Anubis. It's not your decision to make. It's not. It's the person who wants one. It does not matter. That does not matter at all.
wanted.
It's irrelevant.
Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because they helped.
This is also true. There are states where a miscarriage can put you in legal liability. A miscarriage.
Providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car.
They're not babies when you get an abortion, Knight. They're not babies. They're fetuses. They are not babies. Nobody is killing babies.
In the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that.
I think you should have the right to kill yourself. Yeah, I do. I think you should. I don't think anyone should have the right to stop you from murdering yourself from committing suicide if you want to. Nobody should be able to, like, the government is not, their job is not to mandate how you live your life, okay? And
I pledge to you,
I don't give a shit
when
about your
Congress
religious
passes a
perspective.
bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into
This isn't
law.
going to happen,
But
though. Again, this is another
understand,
thing.
if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie.
What about people that are terminally ill, Knight? What about people that are suffering and are going to die soon? What about people who aren't terminally ill but are chronically ill and their entire existence is suffering?
Not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states.
Nobody has
And the
said this.
state-
Again, he just keeps making this claim that everybody wanted it, the Democrats wanted it, legal scholars agree with it. Nobody did. It's just Republicans and the think tanks like the Heritage Foundation that are pushing for this, and the evangelical Christian base. The Christian extremists in the country are the ones that wanted this, and nobody else.
States are voting, and it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor.
Most people don't want it. You can want it. Your family can want it, and I don't care. Most people don't. We know this for a fact. Go look at the polling for this. Go look at both national and local polling for this.
Favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because
And
this,
again, you don't have the right to tell me what to do with my body. The government has no fucking right to tell me what I can do with my own body. Okay? I don't care if you want it. I don't care if your family wants it. I don't care what your opinion is. The only opinion that matters is the person who wants to have an abortion's opinion and the medical professionals that they're talking to. Only opinions that matter, nobody else's. Shut the fuck up about it.
issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible
won't
for her to
ever
get the vote, especially
It's not
now
going to
with
happen unless we win like all three. You know, if we win the House and the Senate, sure, but no, she's not going to get that vote. It's not going to happen.
the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being
The government
a total...
doesn't want to save babies, and babies aren't being harmed. I'm getting angry because you are advocating for the government controlling other people's bodies.
catastrophe. The student loans, and then...
Leave people
her,
alone.
I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And
This
how
isn't true.
unfair
We
that
have
would have been.
cut
Part of the reason
significant
they
amounts of
lost
student debt.
to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about.
Anti-democratic thought isn't going to fix anything. People don't need guidance. People need to leave other people the fuck alone and worry about themselves. Think about yourself, not like obviously care about others and work for like good social positive change, but you don't need to guide others. Just be kind to others and respect them. That's all you need to do. Just engage authentically with people, be kind, be respectful, and that's all you need to do. Everything other than that, you don't need to guide people. No one, if someone asks for your guidance, then great. If it's not been asked for, then no one wants it. You don't like your opinions don't belong in the doctor's office of somebody else or in the bedroom of somebody else or what they do with their own body.
About abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has...
so your
a
vice
certain-
presidential candidate is making sweeping claims about how you will act as president, but you haven't talked to him about it? That's interesting.
view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans.
She got the student loan. Student loan forgiveness has happened. We've cut significant, well, not significant, but we've cut the student loans of many students, specifically ones that went to, like, it's about being selfless. Yeah, being selfless and supporting others is good. That's a good thing. But you're saying that we don't, like, you're saying to do it without democracy and by forced guidance. That's not being selfless and supporting others. That's controlling others for your personal ideology to be the case. It's you believe this, and therefore other people need to believe it. That's not being selfless and supporting others. You pay your loans. They didn't cut all student loan debt. Are you kidding me? That's trillions of dollars. They've put a dent in it, and they've done it to mostly underprivileged people. Are you a like poor black person that goes to an all black university? There's no one's trying to take away your guns either. What the fuck are you people talking about? There's just an assault rifle ban. No one's taking guns away from you.
Close to getting student loans. They taunted
You guys are
young
insane.
people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful.
No,
Let's go to Congress.
not a
do
lot
it.
of people
But
have had their
the fact
loans
is that for
forgiven.
years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody
some
said
have.
couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America.
It is
and
insulting.
Understand what has been happening
insane.
under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people.
Remember that case in Alabama where like a guy walked into the wrong door inside of like a sperm bank and knocked over like a vial that was holding an egg or a sperm or something in there. It was like a reproduction facility, and they destroyed a vial, and they're being sued for murder for the frozen embryo that wasn't even implanted in a body. That's what Trump has brought with this. This is the type of laws that are now being passed, and the type of lawsuits that people are being hit with because of the lack of protections of Roe v. Wade.
People, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers.
He wants to make that
go
illegal.
and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
It
Vice
would be
President Harris.
incredibly funny if every single state just enshrined abortion protections into their constitution anyway. Okay, maybe not Utah. Utah won't do it, but all the other ones maybe.
I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie.
Oh, she lied.
I have
Did
been a
she?
leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody
Oh,
else.
you mean after everyone got really mad at you, including your own base, then you went and tried to fix the problem. Right.
Knows it.
That's
I
what
have
we're
been a
talking
leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question.
you
Would you
could
veto?
Wait, okay. Come on, answer the question, Kamala. It's not bad to say no. At like 3rd trimester abortions don't happen anyway. Just say the actual line. Don't say I want to bring back the protections of Roe. The median voter is fucking stupid. Be very specific. She's talking here like she's talking to other political officials, to people in her like industry. All of America is watching this right now. Speak like you're speaking to the average person. Jesus Christ. She is losing this debate just because of this.
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the
follow-up.
9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
Yeah, we're not.
We're gonna turn now to
it was already
immigration and
illegal
border
to have
security. We know it's an
abortions at 7, 8, 9 months. It was already illegal.
issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board.
Unless like the mother was going to die, then we did not do that. It was life of the mother was the case.
In this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of.
I'm sorry, guys. I really need to pee. I'll be really quick. Don't leave. Back. There goes my there went my desire to cover this live. So many stun locks that we are now significantly behind.
Migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that
We were never going to do anything about immigration because it wasn't an issue until the Republicans started screaming about it. It was helping the economy.
that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families.
Again, it's American citizens are bringing the fentanyl into the U.S., according to the DEA and the Department of Homeland Security.
Resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time.
That's why there's so much tea.
Where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter.
Okay, I just want to talk about this because I brought this up on stream yesterday. I'm almost positive that Donald Trump does not know that asylum has two meanings. Because every time he brings up Hannibal Lecter and insane asylums, he immediately ties that to immigration, as if people seeking asylum are coming from asylums, is the claim that he continuously has made. Like, I've seen him make it at 3 different rallies over the last month. And I'm almost positive that he doesn't know that there's 2 meanings to that word. Or he does and he doesn't care.
Talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
Nice bait from her. He's going to get stun locked on this.
And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies.
Oh, I have the biggest rallies. Literally.
In the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country.
I have the biggest rallies. I have the best rallies. Everybody loves me. I'm Donald Trump, and I have never had a small crowd size. He's so stupid.
Just to go into another subject, what they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
First of all, it was cats, and we know that that was a lie. We just covered it.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live.
I'm better than Hassan. That's funny.
There. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as
the funny thing is, I'm also a Turkish immigrant that grew up in New Jersey. You saying that I'm more fun to watch than Hassan is quite funny to me.
Phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken
the people on
used
Fox
for
News
food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm taking it from the city manager.
Their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Holy shit! We actually
Again,
have
the
good
Springfield city
moderators.
manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President
I'm
Harris,
not,
I'll let you respond
I'm
to the
not
rest of what you've
taking
heard.
this from television. I'm taking this from the city manager. Fucking go off, man.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And
making it real clear that the actual choice here isn't between a Democrat and a Republican, it's between a Republican and a fascist.
Already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen...
And don't forget that his Secretary of State referred to him as a, quote, fucking moron.
To this kind of rhetoric,
or idiot, rather.
When the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person.
Why should you believe anybody
having to do with?
Why should you believe anybody? You shouldn't believe anybody. If somebody makes a claim, look it up and see if it's true. That's just untrue, Knight. Again, why should I believe you?
And the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed, and I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else, can they?
Yeah, they can write books because you do crazy shit. And it's worth telling other people about because you're horrible and insane.
But they have done such a poor job. And they never fire anybody.
Prove your claim.
Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
That's also not true. Joe Biden got more votes than him in 2020.
Let me continue on.
Like Joe Biden got 80 million votes in like 2020.
Immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard.
I have a
you say
lot
things
to talk about this. I have a lot to say about it. It would literally destroy the country completely for him to do his plan that he's laid out. Stick around for after because that's going to take a little while. I don't want to pause the debate midway through to really go into why. But the mass deportation thing will literally destroy the country. It would be ruinous for our economy. It would be ruinous socially, and it would lessen our position in the world by a significant chunk. It would also. We'll go over it, but it would lead to people
problem using the U.S. military.
Yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries
Again,
like
broad
Venezuela,
sweeping
don't
claims
ever come back or we're going to kill you.
with
Do you know
zero
that crime
evidence
in Venezuela and crime
zero
in
reality
countries
backing
all
them
over
up.
the world
Doesn't
is
matter.
way down?
You can say
You know
anything.
why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow, and I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people.
You can get jobs without documentation. Most of the undocumented immigrants work on farms. They grow your food, Knight.
Let in, and all
They
over
pay
the world.
taxes too. They have jobs and they pay taxes. They might not pay federal taxes because they're not allowed to have jobs, but they still buy things. They still spend money. They pay for income. Sorry, not income tax. Retail tax. What is it called? Sales tax. Sales tax. No, it's not black jobs, and it doesn't hurt the economy. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Crime is down
Literally none.
all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof.
Go watch
their
my stream on
fraudulent
it. I made a
statements that they
video on
made.
it, Knight.
Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President
Yeah,
Trump,
none.
as you know, the
That's the
FBI says
levels.
overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris, I'll
FBI
give you
they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said
Doesn't
they
make a
created turned
difference.
out to be a fraud.
President
You're
Trump,
still
thank you. I'll let
wrong,
you
and you
respond,
still
Vice
don't know what
President
you're
Well,
talking
I think
about.
this is so rich, coming from
And also
someone who
Trump
has been
just lied again.
prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Don't forget his
And let's
conditions.
be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice
Actually hate Trump personally. I think he's quite funny. I just hate his policies. And I really dislike his supporters. And I don't hate his supporters because they support him either. I dislike Trump supporters because they're dumb.
president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward.
Don't get me wrong, he is a piece of shit. I just don't hate him. I don't hate really anybody. Most of the politicians that we see are pieces of shit. I'll call it like it is. When Kamala does something bad, I still call her out too.
That we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses,
Disagree.
address
And so
bringing
does
down
every
the
other
price of
expert.
groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Sorry, that
President
was
Harris,
to
thank you.
YouTube
Excuse
chat,
me.
not to Kamala Harris. I
Every one
agree
of
with
those
every word she just
cases
said.
was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah, the
I'm
immunity?
winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department.
You mean it never happened in this country? What about Nixon, Trump? What about Richard Nixon? You committed crimes and you're being prosecuted for them. It's not political persecution.
Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then
Again,
they say,
I've never
"Oh,
done anything
he was-
wrong.
He's a criminal." They're the
Look at
ones
me.
that
I'm
made
the
them
I'm the
go
little
after
boy.
me. By
I've
the way,
never
Joe
done anything
Biden
wrong.
was
You
found.
can't persecute me. I'm the best. I've never lost anything. I will win all of these. Like, it's just the same tired shit every single time.
Essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in
What?
my Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents
Okay,
case.
that I agree
and what
with.
happened in my documents case? They said, "Oh, that's the toughest of them all." A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's
By a judge that has a history of corruption that you appointed that is now being challenged to overturn the throwing out of that case because it was thrown out on grounds that don't make any rational sense. That case got thrown out on the grounds that Jack Smith wasn't properly appointed and because of Trump's immunity. Neither of those things mean that the case needs to be thrown out. She just chose to do that. And now it's going to be overturned by a higher court so that case can actually go through. Whether he has immunity or not is a whole other discussion, but the case still exists. He didn't win.
Organization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They
And again,
used
it was his judge. Weaponization of crime for politics is exactly what he does. How many times has Trump said he's going to imprison his political opponents? How many times has he said that this week?
it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris.
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
Weaponized, please.
This
is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet
I
to
know
the
what-
head.
I know what you are, but
because
what
of
am I?
The things that they say about me. They talk
So
about
childish.
democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation.
Oh, you mean like the Russia that spent millions of, that literally just came out that conservative pundits and political commentators on YouTube are getting paid by Russia to make pro-Russian propaganda, like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, fucking, what was her name, Lauren Southern, like, oh, this is fake Russia.
That went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
And again, just to be clear, in 2016, yes, all Democrats thought that Donald Trump had a personal plan, had a personal deal that he had worked out with Putin. And yes, we were wrong. That did not happen in 2016. You know what was found to have happened, though, is that Russia influenced the election anyway. They just didn't have a deal. This was found. We know this for a fact. Even the left tries to deny this. It's ridiculous.
President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you
You're
wanted
gonna
to
take a
ban
break.
fracking.
I think
Now
we
you
need
don't.
to
You wanted
calm down a
mandatory
little bit.
government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking.
You're never going to win
I have not
Pennsylvania
banned
if you say
fracking as
you're
Vice
gonna ban
President of the
fracking.
United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases
She had to
for
say,
fracking.
I will never
My
ban
position
fracking because there
that
is
we
no
have
chance
got
of winning
to invest
Pennsylvania
in
otherwise.
diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid
We already
raised by a
produce
hardworking mother.
enough oil to be entirely energy self-sufficient. Not that we should. We should focus on green energy, but yeah, we're not missing much. She's just glazing her middle-class, child.
Dollars on a silver platter and then file bankruptcy 6 times is a value that I bring to my work, to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increased by 3 million homes
Very
by
good
the end of my
numbers.
first
3
term.
million homes.
My
I
work
like that.
that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done. Protecting seniors from schools have not
I
changed.
think she could have accomplished the entire sentence that she just said by just saying, I have empathy for the American people, and Donald Trump lacks empathy.
And not beating people down.
Empathy.
And name
Again.
calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are
Fraud.
even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that.
This man
Fracking?
bankrupted 3 casinos. How do you bankrupt a casino? Like, it's built for you to always win, and he didn't win 3 times. How? How? 3 different casinos.
Horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota,
never
she
true.
went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, that was actually
She
good.
went
That was
out-
good from him.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
When
This
the-
is a
where the
radical
fuck is he
left
getting this stuff from?
liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one.
Like, he's just simply lying here. For the sake of it. I mean, transgender operations on illegal immigrants in prison. What the fuck are you talking about, man? It's like I cannot fathom where these thoughts are appearing in his mind. Where are you basing this off of? Like, I know he just makes shit up all the time, but I mean, the level of making shit up that I could not have produced that thought. The healthy mind could not produce that thought as the lie that you put out. It's literally psychotic. I mean, okay, not literally, but it's unfathomable. I mean,
Just to finish
It's
one
funny.
thing, so
Actually
important in my
hilarious.
opinion.
but this is where it
So
goes.
I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because
Is he
the
talking about
prices of
years?
energy were,
Okay,
were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So
Gas prices don't go up based on the US president's policy. They go up based on the global market. When Saudi Arabia decides, we need some more money, let's make less gas so that, like, let's produce less oil and put less on the market so the price goes up, then the price goes up. In fact, it's going to go up in the next month or two because Saudi Arabia wants Donald Trump to win. And so they will raise the gas prices to piss Americans off and convince them into voting for Donald Trump. Like Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, none of them get to decide the prices of gas at the pump. They can maybe affect it by releasing some of our reserve, but that's not how gas prices are set anywhere in the world. If we used only our own energy production, or only the gas and oil that we produce, sure, maybe, but we don't. We export most of it and save the rest of it.
they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to
Good.
solar,
I
where
hope
they
we do.
need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400
Like I say, he makes a point, and then he makes the immediate opposite of said point, so that he has no actual position, so that you get to decide what his position is in your head. That's how he has his base. Is nobody actually knows what he thinks. They just think that they know.
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace.
Maybe, I don't know, storming the Capitol is a valid reason for a cop to shoot you. You know, 7 people died because of January 6th. A couple of cops killed themselves from the trauma after. Have you, we keep watching.
We
I'll pull
didn't
up some
do
videos
this
for
group
afterward.
of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that.
Again,
she
lies.
was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? What are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted?
They have been prosecuted. January 6th rioters stormed the Capitol, tried to hang Mike Pence, tried to find like officials, like senators. They were looking for Nancy Pelosi. They brought weapons. Do you think that there is any chance, had a single Democrat, any of them, been, not safely extracted from the Capitol, that the crowd that marched in, that when we saw them with the photos picking up the flags in the Hall of Congress, do you think if they ran into Nancy Pelosi, that they would not instantly murder her? Doesn't matter whether Trump told them to do it or not. Trump told them to be there, and Trump did not tell them to stop rioting, and also encouraged them many a time. He did encourage them. You're just lying.
Prosecuted, or in Seattle. They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When
Also
are those
covered
people
it.
going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
Like, it
I
started
had nothing
out
to
as
do
a
with
Trump
that other
rally.
than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally, or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me.
It wasn't to support him. It wasn't to seize Congress either. They were there to pressure Congress to not vote that way. They were counting the votes. They wanted to hang Mike Pence because he voted to verify that the vote count was true, like that it was correct, that he didn't throw the election to Donald Trump. That's why they wanted to hang Mike Pence.
Done by others.
I'm not saying he's liable for Jan 6th, although he is liable. That's not the argument that we're having right now, though. It's that he did instigate January 6th. And also that all of the January 6ers, this was not a peaceful protest. This was assault on many of you. This was a violent insurrection attempt.
Give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for
entirely a
security.
lie.
Nancy Pelosi was responsible.
They didn't call in the National Guard because they didn't want the National Guard to be like pulling down a protest. They did call in the National Guard once they got violent. But hey, let's have a look. Real quick. Does this look peaceful to you? There's no sound, so nothing I can do about that. But you think if there was a Democrat standing in the hallway, like right over here, that they wouldn't have immediately beelined and start beating them?
She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
Yeah.
And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation.
Wrong one. Cop who was attacked on January 6th says that people violently attacked me and told me Trump sent them.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob
US
of people
Capitol Police
carrying
Officer.
tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people
Yeah,
on each
not
side.
even anti-Semitic hate,
Let's
literal
remember
Nazis. Like
that when
literal
it came
Nazis.
to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
He has said that. He has also multiple times already stated that he will not cede the election if he loses, because he insists that it will be rigged. There's no chance he could ever lose if it wasn't rigged. Obviously, this is a setup for if he loses to bring it up to the courts and try and get the Supreme Court to overturn the election. And if that fails, to do another January 6th. You think they're not preparing for this? You think that they haven't been for years? January 6th, the original one was impromptu. They weren't planned. They didn't know what they were doing. They do now.
Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people.
All of these liars and grifters, sure.
They go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up just like they bring. The meaning of what he
said was still very much clear. It was, I support the Charlottesville Nazis. He didn't, he just, it's that simple. He's lying.
2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not
What
doing
does that have to
anything?
do with the
And I'll tell you
Capitol?
what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad. It's so ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, she's so bad for not being in DC and doing this debate. She should just go home. The fuck are you talking about, man?
Go down to Washington, D.C., and let her sign a bill to close up the border.
She's
Because
not
they
the
have the right
president.
to do it. They don't need
She's not the president.
bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a
Yeah,
bill.
okay. First of all, Joe Biden's not a dog. Second of all, she doesn't have that kind of power. Third of all, stop conflating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They might be on the same ticket. Doesn't mean that they have the same powers. And four, this is both demeaning, insulting, and disrespectful in so many ways.
If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol,
That would
who
be
are
bad
phenomenal.
for us. If we close the border, it hurts the economy, you fucking moron.
If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President.
people are killing many people,
No, they're
unlike
not.
J6.
We talked
Zero.
immigration here tonight. I do want to focus
Maybe not
on
zero,
this
but no,
next
they're
issue to
not.
both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in.
He doesn't
Mr. President, for
have a
3.5
point
years
at all.
after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
He did say that.
I
But you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You
But
know
those-
that. It
That wasn't
we
sarcasm. That was a slip of the tongue. I'll pull up the clip, in fact, because I have it in my sources for last stream.
lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof.
said
All
the
you
whole
have to
quote
do
anyway,
is
but it
look
wasn't
at it.
sarcasm.
And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75.
Oh, Katz, by the way, are you still here? Because this is a couple days ago. Police deny Venezuela gang has taken over rundown apartment complex in Denver suburb. So does most media, by the way. Polifax, Colorado Sun, the Daily Mail, NBC, CBS. It was a lie. None of it's true. There you go.
5 million votes, the most votes
Told
any
you.
sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election,
not how
people should
that
never
works.
be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even.
I covered this in my last stream. There is almost zero instance, actually, there are zero instances of undocumented immigrants trying to vote. You know who commits the most voter fraud? Republicans. Literally, by far. Every case of voter fraud that has been investigated and found, because a lot were investigated after 2020 and the claims that he made, found that almost all of the actual cases of illegal voting were old people that moved and accidentally didn't deregister in their old state and voted in their new state, but didn't know that they had to deregister in the old one, or people that thought that they had the right to vote, were given a ballot and were not allowed to vote. But those are all of the ones that aren't Republicans. All of the cases of Republicans doing election fraud are people. There was a woman who put 50 votes in for Donald Trump last time around. Watch my last stream. It's genuinely on there. There is no voter fraud being committed by undocumented immigrants. This is a flat out lie and has been proven to be the case for years, because this lie has existed way back since like the Bush days. They claim it every single time, and every single time it's investigated, nothing has ever been found to substantiate it.
Even speak English.
Ever.
They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're
You're lying.
allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video.
You know who is trying to
didn't
influence the vote? Russia.
detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker, we didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system
That's not
where
true. A lot of those cases were looked into and found nothing. A lot of them said that they had no standing because he had nothing to base it on, that he had no argument. His lawyers could not make an argument good enough for the court to take it seriously. That's what he's saying right now.
A person in an election doesn't have standing. The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it.
Oh, please.
I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania.
Oh, you mean Georgia, where there's the phone call of you on the phone with the governor saying, I need to find, was it 14,000 votes? Like, I need to make them appear? Yeah.
I'll show you. We have so many facts
Georgia?
and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline.
America
we
has
have a
fallen,
nation
our
that is
in
dying,
decline.
David.
This
Mr.
is
President,
such
thank
a
you.
common
Vice President Harris,
way of
you heard the president there
fascists
tonight.
to try and influence your opinion. They have to make you afraid. Our nation is dying. We're losing. America has fallen. Meanwhile, we're the most powerful nation in the entire world. We're the richest nation in the entire world. We have influence to the point where we can do literally anything we want and nobody can stop us. There is not a country on this earth that could challenge the United States. Even nuclear armed countries. The only way anyone can stop us from doing whatever the fuck we want is if either the entire world teamed up against us all at once, maybe even, I don't even think that might do it, or if humanity got ended by nuclear war entirely. There is nothing that he's saying that is true. We are at our most powerful. The lives of humans now, the average person today, lives in a more peaceful and prosperous time than ever before in history. Never has there been a time where the average person has the ability to do the things that they do, the amenities that they have, the access to food that we have. Yes, obviously, cost of living and all of this is an issue, but that's not to say that we have fallen. It's not even close to the truth, remotely, in any way.
He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Yes.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Yeah.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States.
He does genuinely sound significantly more sane than Trump does and has this entire debate. In fact, it does come off as that Trump has been whining this entire time. He hasn't actually been on the offense. It's been the defense, and I think that's good. I didn't like her talking style at the start, but she's getting better with it, and I don't know, it doesn't appeal to me, but I think it might appeal to the average person.
And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
This is true.
And when you then talk in this way...
She's not playing the emotional card, Knight. She's playing empathy. And Trump is trying to make himself look better. Are you even watching the same debate? All he's done is complain. He hasn't been straightforward at all. All he's done is lie and complain. And she has asked Americans to use their empathy and has made sensible points. I don't think she's been particularly good, but it's not emotion, it's empathy. And Trump has been horrible.
Presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
This is true.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person.
That was an important one. Viktor Orban is another authority. He just loves to compliment authoritarians.
Smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because
they did the
you
jello
need
wrestling, really.
Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump.
That's not
We
true.
had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got
her facial expressions, Cheeseburger, have been excellent. Her responses have been pretty subpar, just so you're catching up. But she does come off as sane, and Trump has just complained this entire time. He's only just made flat out broad lies and then complains about, oh, they're prosecuting me, they're persecuting me, oh, my election, I did win, and oh, I have the biggest crowd size, and all this stuff. It's just been whinging and complaining.
14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
A, inaccurate, and B, disrespectful. But you know,
your time is up.
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held American.
I need to pee, and I'm going to take this time to say everything Kamala Harris here says is going to be weak, bullshit, and, you know, just I love Israel, praise Netanyahu. And everything Trump's going to say is going to be something along the lines of, we should glass Gaza and, I don't know, murder brown people. I'll be right back.
Among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers.
Oh, yeah, Israel has the right to defend itself.
What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
There's no hostages left. Israel killed them all, and Israel is preventing the ceasefire. They're protesting in Tel Aviv right now because they know this.
And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people.
You know who's against a two-state solution? Benjamin Netanyahu. This is insulting,
Israel and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel.
Okay, so what this says to me is when Israel invades Lebanon early next month, we're going to fully support them. That's what that says to me.
But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
You've done literally nothing.
President
to
Trump,
make that
how
a
would you
reality.
negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president,
Everything is the
Russia
same thing,
would
yeah.
have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have
No
gone
threat
into
of it,
Ukraine
no threat of it.
and killed.
When you were president, Russia had already taken Crimea and was occupying it. You buffoon. You liar. You ghoul. It also, we were talking about Israel. You just don't want to say that you would absolutely do the same exact thing that Kamala Harris would, that you would say the same lines that she did. So you had to make this about Ukraine because you like to, I don't know, you want to suck Putin off, and also know that if you become president, you'll just let Ukraine be ceded to Russia. They'll just take the territory. We're not going to keep funding them if he wins. The Republicans have been trying to cut funding to Ukraine for years now.
Millions of people, when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there.
It is really bad
But
over
when she
there.
mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very
The
important
only
speech.
good
She
thing that
refused
she's done on Israel.
to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates it.
Don't even know if that's true. It's also probably, well, it's almost certainly untrue and a misleading statement that's insulting. But regardless, the only good thing that she did on Israel was standing up Netanyahu when he had his speech. The only better thing she could have done is to be there and spit in his face.
Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that
sure
one.
that's the case.
She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had.
Yeah.
Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the
Also untrue.
28 different.
Also, Trump is specifically responsible when Iran says they have a nuclear weapon in the next 2 years. It's his fault in particular for getting rid of the nuclear deal, which was working. They were still building one secretly, but it would have taken them significantly longer. They will have one within 2 years. I guarantee it. Within 5, 100%.
Spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror.
Terror.
They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now
just
they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around.
How
Look
have
at
they
what's
become a rich nation again? With our help, how did we make that happen?
happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president,
Again, there's literally no way that he could have stopped Hamas from doing this. I mean, Israel didn't, and they knew it was going to happen. Egypt told them days beforehand, and they still did nothing because they wanted it to happen. Because Israel, very, very, like the government of Israel wants to annex the land of the West Bank and Gaza. He's just lying. And with Russia, yeah, sure, okay, the war wouldn't have happened because Russia just would have taken Ukraine.
elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Okay.
Vice President Harris,
sure.
he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear.
Just because I wanted to say this while I'm looking up stuff on Twitter. Libs of TikTok posted this. Donald Trump left us with the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War. Quote, Kamala Harris, tomorrow is 9/11. January 6th was a worse attack on democracy than 9/11 because 9/11 wasn't an attack on democracy. It was an attack on America. January 6th was specifically an attack on democracy. And again, I mean, it's libs of TikTok. You can't really expect the truth from these people. Barely people. Libs of TikTok isn't even a person. That's a ghoul. That's a lich, a demon from the depths of hell that has come up to specifically ruin people's lives. That's what libs of TikTok is.
They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation
No you.
last month.
Really? That's your answer is no you? What are you, 5?
For the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down.
Every
Putin
time
endorsed
he
her
doesn't
last
know
week,
what to talk
said,
about.
I hope
It
she
has to
wins.
come
And I
back
think
to
he meant it.
immigration, which is
Because
also
what
a
he's
lie.
gotten away with
By the
is
way, the whole
absolutely...
immigration thing is it's her fault. It's our fault that he even has this talking point because we let them have it. If we had this fight 3 months ago, it wouldn't be a talking point. But it's so funny that anytime he doesn't know what to say, he has to default to the immigrants, the immigrants, the immigrants. When he doesn't answer direct questions, he doesn't answer like direct statements about him. He just changes the topic back to immigration every time.
Incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world?
This is untrue, by the way. Here's a little fact check from PolitiFact. Donald Trump, quote, shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Joe Biden approved it, then Biden shut it down. U.S. liquefied natural export capacity. So, just so you know, that's not, let's hear what he says, but that's not what happened.
Going to Germany and all over Europe because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center.
But the point there is the U.S. became the top exporter of liquefied natural gas because of this under Biden. Not that it's good, but still.
Right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Oh, cool. Great.
Will continue after this.
You know, I'm going to take the chance of, while they're on break, to say some things, all right? This debate so far has been exactly as I predicted, as pretty boring and uneventful. Both sides have barely said anything useful. As I said multiple times, Trump has just mainly whinged and complained, and Kamala Harris has come off as sane, but also very boring. She's been aiming very much to the center, and I don't know, the way that she's answering his questions, I don't vibe with. She's not answering them directly. It's been bothering me, but it has been all right. Like, she's been doing better than expected. A lot of the points that were brought up that were lies. I pulled up a tweet earlier. The Aurora, Colorado one was a lie. Obviously, Venezuelan gangs did not actually take over an apartment complex, according to the police of Aurora. We covered the Springfield, Ohio one before the debate. That's also another lie. Wasn't true. The tariffs, Donald Trump does not understand tariffs. He thinks that if he puts a tariff on a country, then they are paying for it. If you put a tariff on, I don't know, pillows that you're buying from China, and it's a 20% tariff, China will pay 20% more to get that item into your country, but then you're going to pay the 20% more in the store when you're buying it, especially if it's broad tariffs, broad reaching tariffs, the way that he's talking about, because that makes it easier to mask the price increases and make them even higher than needed to be. You might pay even more than the 20% because they might say, oh, this is a good chance to make an even further profit. Look, it's just everything that Trump has said has been baseless, honestly. He said inflation was the highest that it's been ever. It's the lowest it's been in years. Immigration, all of it's a lie. Again, I've covered this multiple times. It's really what they keep coming back to. They keep calling Kamala Harris the border czar. They keep conflating Kamala Harris and Joe Biden as if she has the same power as he does. And it's just not true. She doesn't. I don't know. She's coming off as weak to me because she could hit harder. I don't know. I feel like she should be more direct with Trump. I have been pretty pleased with the moderators actually doing their job. You know, they'll point out, be like, actually, this statement isn't true, as they should. And I mean, January 6th was he's very clearly lying about it. I have some other links pulled up to look at when we're doing this, but let's have a look. Immigrants less likely to commit crimes than U.S.-born Americans. Study finds. This is this year. Let's get down to the actual stats. Some of the most extensive research comes from Stanford University. Economist Ran Abramitsky found that since 1960, immigrants were 60% less to be incarcerated than U.S.-born people. There is also state-level research that shows similar results at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. Looked into Texas in 2019. They found that undocumented migrants were 37.1% less likely to be convicted of a crime. Beyond incarceration rates, research also shows there's no correlation between undocumented people and a rise in crime. This found that between 2007 and 2016, there was no link between undocumented immigrants and a rise in violent or property crime in communities. None. It's just not real. It's made up. The whole migrant crime wave thing is entirely made up. Do not let them continue with it. Don't let them get away with it. They're just making shit up. By the way, this is the average thought point of I don't know, like a third of Trump supporters. So just so you know, that was probably in reference to Trump saying that he was a leader in fertility. Which is fucking weird.
Pick up the final sprint to Election Day.
Okay. Jesus Christ. The Israel stuff was painful to watch. Just because, I mean, they both have the same position here. I don't know.
Presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives. that are being
not gonna answer that
uselessly,
question.
people being killed by the millions. It's the
He will not answer this question. He won't answer any single part of this question.
millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done.
We don't give Ukraine money, guys. We don't give them money. We give them old military tech, retired military tech, stuff that's sitting in a bunker somewhere that's going to be decommissioned. Almost always. We've given them some F-16s after years of them begging for it, but everything else we give them is old tech. It's old machines. It's physical items, not money. We don't give them money.
Than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be.
There is no talking to Putin to end this war. There is none, except for what Trump wants to do, which is cede the war, to concede, to let Putin win. That's the only way to do this via a phone call. Does Putin have a picture with Obama? I don't know. Google it. I'm not Google images.
Be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III.
Well, of course it could lead to World War III, and that's because Putin, your little bestie over there, is the one that keeps pushing it that way. And then we'll claim that we are doing so by supporting Ukraine. The only way this war, the Ukraine war, will actually end is by making Russia suffer enough losses that they take Putin out of office. It's to make the Russian people, the oligarchs, feel like, oh shit, again, this isn't worth it. And they've been increasingly heading in that direction, especially as the war has now moved into Russian territory with Ukraine going into Kursk. They'll argue that, no, this is risking nuclear war, while Russia's already, threatening nuclear war. And then people like Trump will go down on their knees and agree, let's just say, with that point of view, specifically to just give it to Russia.
And we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president?
He's
we
in
don't
the
even
fucking
know if he's
White
a
House,
president.
And just to clarify,
working.
Threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president.
Mr.
No,
President.
Anubis, disagree. Hard disagree.
Doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished
He won't
and
answer
just
it.
get it done.
All right.
Won't
Negotiate
answer
a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on
I don't care about the poly market and the people who are gambling to vote. This election's going to be close regardless. None of those predictions matter. We can, at this point in time, we're not predicting who's going to win. It's 50-50.
support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up.
Yeah.
And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams
This is an excellent answer on her part. Go off, Queen.
tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the
He wants to bring the old Soviet power back. He wants Ukraine because it's part of the border. There used to be buffer states between NATO and Russia. He wants to bring the USSR's map of Russia back so that he has more of a border between NATO, because he's insane and thinks that NATO is going to land invasion Russia, which is just not going to happen. We have no reason to do that.
European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve.
To be clear, fuck NATO, but also not fuck NATO, you know? Actually, not all that clear, but NATO is pretty bad, done a lot of bad shit. In this case, NATO is the only good side. It's NATO or Russia, and it can't be Russia.
The ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians
Not
to
the way
fight
it is,
for
at
their
least.
independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania
Poland
how quickly
would be next.
you would.
In fact, he's already sending people to Poland. He's trying to use immigration to attack Poland because he's pissed that more countries were joining NATO.
Give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship
After the war
with
started.
what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that.
So he would be sitting in Moscow much happier than he is now. This is an admission.
Other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons.
Oh, they never
Nobody ever
talk
thinks
about Russia's nuclear weapons. Famously, the thing that's never mentioned is Russia's nuclear capability. Not like the news doesn't mention it, the media doesn't mention it, Putin doesn't mention. No one talks about Russia's nuclear capability.
about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days
No, they
later,
did. That's not what happened.
he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid.
And
they
this
said the
is
wrong
all a
things.
lie.
That war should have never
Again.
started. She was the emissary. They sent.
He won't say that he would. He won't even say that he would support Ukraine. He doesn't agree. He won't say that it's in the U.S.'s best, like, national interest to for Ukraine to win this war. And then he's saying that Putin would be happy sitting in Moscow, happier than he is now if he was president. He would have just given them Ukraine. He will still just give them Ukraine. He will also just give Palestine to Israel, both the West Bank and to Gaza. He does not care. nuclear weapons are a scare tactic. Absolutely. He's not like, no one's using them. If Russia did use them, it would mean like nothing. All right, because they would use a small tactical nuclear weapon, and then all of their friends that are left would back off too. You think China would want to do business with them if they used a nuclear weapon? China's like pretty buddy-ish with Russia, but not really as well. They're on the same side, but they don't necessarily like each other. Iran does not like Russia. They work together. They sell them, shit. But no, Russia's not going to benefit from using a nuclear weapon. And if Russia did use a nuke, all that would do is get the entire world to stand up and be like, no, fuck that. Russia needs to win. Like India, Pakistan also have nuclear weapons. Fucking, it's not going to happen. It's fake. It's nonsense. It's bullshit. He just does not want to admit that he would get on his knees for Vladimir Putin and open his mouth and then say the words, "You can have Ukraine." You thought I was going somewhere else with that, but I wasn't. He's lying. He's always lying. This whole time he's just been lying and complaining.
Her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. Yeah. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time.
Hold on 1 second.
Hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. Yeah. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the...
Should have never done Iraq 100%. And I know people will disagree with me when I say we should have never invaded Afghanistan, but we should have never invaded Afghanistan either.
$300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban.
Yep,
the negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we
actually do
honor
this.
the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them.
Wait, hold on. I need to know the adjectives that were going through her head. Look at this.
Former president, as president,
Yes, she did. She almost slipped. God, I wish. That would have been lovely. That's so funny. I need to know what she almost said.
invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America.
He's never been respectful to the military at all. Just recently, he said that the Presidential Medal of Freedom was better than the Medal of Honor because the people who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom were pretty and the other ones were like dead and disfigured. He's like, it's ridiculous how much he hates the military. Or rather, not hates the military, but is disrespectful towards them. He is called prisoners of war losers, suckers. I mean, they never stop. J.D. Vance is constantly attacking Tim Walz. They will use the military as a tool, like not the actual military, but the concept of patriotism around the military as a tool when it suits them, and then they will have utter disdain for them afterward. Do you think that Trump won't cut the VA benefits? If you're a veteran, you think Trump's going to help you? No, he's not. He fucking despises you. To him, you're the same as someone who wants welfare.
America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force.
You heard it here straight from the horse's mouth. Trump got involved with the Taliban.
Force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike
Making a joke, Anubis.
Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left.
We didn't leave many Americans behind. 7 soldiers got killed while we were pulling out because they were attacked.
We wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind.
It wasn't brand new, and we left it behind because it was cheaper to leave it there than to bring it home. It was cheaper to just buy new ones than to bring it back. That's why we left that shit there.
And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it.
What did they do?
It.
What?
The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to.
What did we not do?
do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's
the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. It was soldiers that were getting attacked in a war zone as we pulled out. There was no planned peace deal. The Taliban immediately took back all of Afghanistan within 3 days of us leaving. That wasn't due to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. There was no way to stop that. The only thing that was preventing that from happening was the U.S. troop presence in the region. Once we pulled out, of course they did what they did. No fucking shit. What else were they going to do?
Russia attacked Ukraine because they saw how incompetent she
and back to
and
Russia.
her boss are.
President Trump,
You
thank
won't
you.
even say that Ukraine is worth fighting for. He has nothing. He just dodges every fucking question and complains.
I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
Oh, okay, hold on. If we're talking about race and politics, let me get some tea because my throat's getting sore. Let me just put the kettle on. Excuse me for just another 30 seconds. It's my cat's feeding time, and my cat is weird with food, so I have to feed him specifically on a schedule. I'm just gonna throw some crunchies in his bowl. Bear back. Hold on. Hold your horses. I'm coming. Okay. The horses have been hilled. The cat has been fed. The tea has been made. Now let's hear Donald Trump say some really racist shit.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is.
Then why have
I
you
don't
done
care.
it multiple times?
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is
You
okay.
brought it up on more than 3 different occasions, and you don't care?
With me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and
Oh, you don't know, and you didn't, and then you went on to you had an interview in a room full of black journalists, and then made that claim again, and then argued it. But no, you don't know. You don't care at all. Of course not. Why would you care about her race, especially when you're going and arguing about it all the time?
I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Also,
You know,
very
I
true.
do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember, how Donald Trump started. He was
I mean, remember that this is the same thing they're doing with immigration. It's not just race and ethnicity. They're attacking literally everybody. I mean, down to the fact of it's the evangelical white Christian nationalist base that he feeds off of. And it's their beliefs. So he will attack literally anybody's race. He attacked Obama for the first couple years of his election. After Trump won, he was still talking about Obama's birth certificate like 3 years after he was president himself.
Land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families.
This is also
Let's
true.
remember, this is the same individual
In the 90s, I think.
who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread
He did, and they were found innocent afterward.
birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
There's that.
And I think the American people want better than that.
He's also consistently been, like, he's always a misogynist, and he's always talking down to women. But the difference between, like, look up a video of him answering a question from a woman reporter who's white and answering a question from a black woman reporter, like a journalist. Watch the difference in his tone and how he answers those questions. He has a even greater disdain for women of color than he does regular just women who he already holds disdain for, which just shows that he does care about race. He's a racist.
Want better than this. Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people, knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
I agree.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country.
It is the most divisive presidency in history of our country, but it's because of Trump. He's the one making it divisive. Honestly, actually, it might have been his presidency. I don't know. One or the other. We're in the most divisive time than we've been in our country's history since the Civil War. There are people talking about a second Civil War somewhat regularly. It's a trending tag on Twitter like every couple weeks. It's entirely based on the right wing. It's like the South wanting to secede again.
And they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park.
Mayor Bloomberg was also a racist and a piece of shit.
Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said,
No,
well,
they
if they
didn't.
pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty,
They did
then
not.
they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing.
It wasn't 40 or 50 years ago. 1990 was 30 years ago, and she gave responses that continued through time. What about the Obama shit? What about, like, okay, fine. We want to discount the 90s? Fine. Let's discount the 90s. Ooh, shit. What'd I do? No.
The war with Ukraine and
All right, hold on, I know where we are.
Don't kid yourself, David. We're gonna talk one, I'll speak to the other.
Damn it. Didn't mean to lose our spot. Sorry, guys.
The United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people eliminate the ability of insurance companies to
We're not there yet.
President, do I save it and make it
home buyers. That's
the worst inflation?
a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American
I would
people?
love to talk about
Knowing that
actual
regardless
things, yeah.
of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris.
I just
thank
want
you.
to talk
Lindsay?
about real like issues. I want to fix things. We should be talking about anything else than what we are. And we talk about what we do because the right wing, people like Donald Trump, push these agendas like immigration, which isn't a problem. What we should be doing is, like Kamala Harris said, building some houses, building clean energy infrastructure. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about healthcare? Anything that actually affects the lives of American citizens rather than something that he made up or he wants to happen for his ego to feel better. We spent half this debate listening to him talking about his crowd size, how much other leaders love him, how everyone hates Kamala Harris and that no one respects her. There has been like no actual prescriptions of what to do from Donald Trump. There was no policy ideas. He hasn't said anything that he actually wants to accomplish. It's, oh, well, this would have happened. This wouldn't have happened if it was me, or this wouldn't have happened if it was me, or this is untrue, or this didn't happen the way they say, and I'm being prosecuted. What are you going to do for Americans? And you've not said a single thing that he would do for you that is true. He said, we'll close the border and we'll tariffs. None of that's going to help you. Those are the only, hold on. Close the border, institute tariffs. Can you think of anything else he has actually said that he wants to do? Oh, and increase police funding. How is that going to help you at the grocery store? Someone mentioned it in chat earlier that they didn't think inflation was down because their grocery store prices aren't. How is what he said going to help you? It's not. It's not.
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive
I want to talk
presidency.
about real things.
Many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me, and if they played, I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies.
A good economy is a strong middle class. Your idea of a good economy is all of the wealth concentrated at the top. I mean, even her good economy isn't even good to me, but yours is infinitely worse.
Every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Again, inflation is at 2.9%. It's the lowest it's been in years. It's been lower. It's the lowest it's been since COVID, since pre-COVID, rather.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new.
Your policies are very Joe Biden-esque. I will give Trump that point, considering there's not much actually different on your policy platform than there is on Joe Biden's. I've covered both of them, so I would know.
New generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans.
Yeah.
I have a plan.
Please.
To give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development.
Again, the child tax credit cut child poverty by over 40% when it was first put in place. This is an even larger credit than it was before that.
Development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight.
It's really unfortunate that anything that we do for the American citizen, like the American public, has to be framed through the lens of a tax credit. Like, why does it need to be a tax credit? Why can't they just give us the $6,000 for, like, it doesn't need to go through that channel. I don't know. It's weird. I understand why they do it. It comes from taxes, Anubis. It comes, yes, from taxes. However, your taxes, if you make less than $400,000 a year, your taxes aren't going up. She's raising taxes on the wealthy. If you make less than $400,000 a year, your taxes will not go up. Is fuck that? Fuck raising tax. What are you, a billionaire? Why do you care? You're not paying for it. It's the rich that are paying for it. Yeah, okay. You're this I'm gonna be a millionaire mindset. You will never, ever, 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 ever achieve what they have. You're always going to be closer to the bottom 1% than you are to the top 1%. All right? It's just how it is. You're not going to be this I'm in the grind set. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be balling, buying myself Bugatti. You're not doing that. It's not going to happen. Shut the fuck up, pay your taxes. Or rather, if you do, then shut the fuck up and pay your taxes. Rich people need to pay more taxes. The current tax rate for the wealthy is lower than it's been in fucking history. Hold on. What's the tax rate? I know the numbers off the top of my head. The highest income tax bracket right now is at 37%. That's the absolute highest. That number should be up by like 85%, because that's how it used to be before we cut these taxes and increase taxes on the middle class instead. The tax bracket right now goes 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. The lowest tax, this 10, like obviously this is making over a certain amount of money. It's under the poverty rate. This entire middle section here, rather all of this is all higher because this is lower. That's it. She should go more in depth in it. I want them to go more in depth in policy. I mean, a lot of people get bored about when they talk about policy, but this is a case that I think would be an exception, especially because Donald Trump hasn't presented any.
As opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling, let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She has
Just lying. Again, lying. Defund the police is not in her policy agenda. She doesn't want to take away everyone's guns. That's just not true. Look into it. It's not what you think it is.
You have to move on to other issues.
Although I wish they would, honestly. I mean, I'm not even anti-gun, but at this point, fuck it. Yeah, let's take them all away. I'm sick of having this conversation.
fracking in Pennsylvania
Also
or
a lie.
anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsey,
to
go ahead.
respond.
President Trump,
No, the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just
going
need
to move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Always was. It's not very good today.
I agree with
And
that.
what I said, that if we
I
come
mean,
up with
it's
something,
better than what we had before. Don't get me wrong, but it was pretty lousy.
and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare.
They didn't vote to change it because what you wanted to change from it was making pre-existing conditions like pregnancy, something that would deny you health insurance. That's why.
But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to.
Oh shit, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris. You had Obamacare was $1 a month. That's not Obamacare. You probably had something. You had Medicaid. I'm almost sure. Obamacare is just the Affordable Care Act, and it's a system of buying health insurance from private companies. It's not the government's not giving you health care through Obamacare. Obamacare was originally Romney Care. It was Mitt Romney's campaign that created Obamacare, and when he lost, Obama just adopted the health care policy of Mitt Romney, and it became named Obamacare by the right. It wasn't, it was never built that way, and it's still not enough. I've done videos on healthcare. It's not anywhere near as affordable. But just because this is quite funny, Taylor Swift actually endorsed Kamala Harris. I think that's great. I mean, the childless cat lady at the bottom shows exactly why.
To just let it.
Medicare is different than Medicaid. Medicare is for seniors over 65. Medicaid would have been what you were on. If you had no job, then you had no income. So yeah, that would have been Medicaid.
Rot and let it go away.
You have to make under like $14,000 or $16,000 a year to apply for that, I think.
Decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our...
So you haven't come up with a plan. You have nothing. Okay.
People, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president.
I have concepts of a plan. Do you need to be president to have a plan? Kamala Harris has a plan. She's not president.
Right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that, and you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act.
Very good line, actually, from there.
Understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have
Great? Really? Ew, come on, don't do this. Come on, Kamala Harris. You don't have to glaze up Republicans that were not good people. John McCain wasn't a good person.
disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great...
Yeah. He said he doesn't like John McCain because he got caught and was a prisoner of war. I don't like John McCain because he's a piece of shit.
John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes. And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the affordability.
I'm surprised she didn't mention the fact that they also considered pregnancy a pre-existing condition. So if you were pregnant and you didn't have health insurance, they would deny you.
Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time
Rather
Medicare
they
to
could.
negotiate drug prices on behalf.
That was one of the big points while they were trying, like, I think halfway through, maybe like the 30th or 32nd attempt at repealing the Affordable Care Act, that was the discourse around it, because they tried to inject like language into what they were doing to make that even easier. I can't even remember. It's been so long. That was back when I lived in Colorado. Like, Jesus.
Of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has.
Now, I agree with this, and she ain't no Bernie Sanders, healthcare for all. But I mean, Trump has literally nothing other than let's make it worse for everybody except for the people who own insurance companies. So.
To be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made
of.
a mistake. And number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years.
He did.
But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But
We can do better, but you have nothing to show for that. You have no plan of better. And at the time, this was the best that they had came up with. I'm glad we have the Affordable Care Act. If we didn't have it now, we wouldn't have something better. That was the best they managed to come up with. Like, logically, like, rationally, this train of thought doesn't follow. It's not, like, the first point does not lead to the second. This is an entire non sequitur.
But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump.
are paying privately for insurance.
People
that
are
have-
always paying privately for insurance. What the fuck do you mean? The government, we don't have state-run insurance. We have state health insurance for seniors that are 65 and up with Medicare, and we fund the health care of the very bottom class with Medicaid, but no, we don't. What is he even talking about here?
Worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6
not
months for an
true.
operation that you need immediately.
President.
That has never been the case. She has never called for public health care. That was Bernie Sanders, my guy. You're thinking of the wrong person again. This is what happens when you're like 75 and you're running for president.
Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to.
I mean, obviously, that wasn't him actually thinking of Bernie Sanders, but he did flat out lie. And just so you know, even if, like, I live in Australia, we have public health care. We have Medicare for all. Every single person has public health care. You know what you also have? We still have private health insurance companies. Lots of people still get private health because they can afford to. They don't want to use the public system. They want to use their private system. You can have both. I mean, I prefer just fund the public system to the point where you don't need the private system, but that would require taking money away from corporations and rich people and funding it into the middle class and the, bottom class. This is rather.
That's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat.
Meanwhile, Trump also says drill, baby, drill.
The question to you
Regularly.
both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax.
Multiple times.
And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who
Yeah, it
has
must suck to live in Florida.
has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been Vice President. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who all
The cope is real. He really thinks that this was a giant win. He's doing terribly. Oh, and also we're talking about unions now. Fucking Donald Trump hates unions. Hates them. He's spoken at length about how much he hates them.
also know, proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going.
That's not true.
They're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these.
This is also not true. Unions are the backbone of the American economy and the middle class. Unions are what made America great. You would not have wages as low as you do if unions were still as strong as they used to be. Reagan began the death of unions, which began the fucking over of the American worker.
These massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States.
This is like a complete lie based off the fear that Europe has of Chinese electric vehicles flooding the European market and them like not being able to sell European-made cars. American-made cars aren't even like a big export of ours. Most of the manufacturing jobs she's created are not automobile manufacturing jobs. Some of them are. A lot of them are industrial manufacturing for things like green energy, and a lot of them are manufacturing jobs for the semiconductors, the superconductors rather, and the chip plants that we're building. It's infrastructure jobs with roads and bridges that are being fixed all across the country. That's not true, Anubis. You have to pay dues to be part of a union, but the union fights for your pay. No, that's not no one wants to go to a union right now. Unions are incredibly popular right now, at the very least, because Joe Biden has been the best president for unions since FDR. The writers' strike, the actors' strike, the United Auto Workers strike, all of these were successful. Well, the writer and the Hollywood one was a bit less because they didn't get nearly as much as they should have out of it. But unions are the only reason that we're not entirely enslaved to the corporate masters at this point in time. I mean, seriously, Cole, please do some research on unions. I'll do a stream on unions at some point this week. Actually, that's a good idea. I'm going to do a whole thing on the history of unions in the United States because this is so. They pay you less than you would make otherwise because you are paying for the protection and the support of a union. I'm gonna do a whole video on this because it's frustrating that so many people have just bought into the misinformation about unions that have been spread by the Republican Party for the most part, sometimes Democrats too, but since the 80s.
Because of these people, what they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't.
Lie. China is like not our friend for either side. Democrats and Republicans are not friendly to China. Donald Trump is probably the friendliest to Xi personally, but even he's not friendly with China.
can't come into our country because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because
it's worse than it should be, but that's not the union's fault themselves. And yes, it's good health care and all of that, but the union itself needs to be more powerful. They need to be able to fight for you. That's why you're getting paid badly, is because the union's not big enough to make sure you get paid well.
they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid.
You organize labor into one group, and then when the laborers of this big group of labor are being mistreated, then they stop doing the labor. You ever heard of the means of production? Well, the means of production are held by the owners of the bourgeoisie, the corporate owners. But the laborers, the proletariat, we work, we make the means of production function. And if we organize and we refuse to do that, then that gives us bargaining power. That's the whole point of a union, is to bargain on behalf of the entirety of the labor force against the people who are already rich and want to pay you as little as they possibly can. Companies and corporations exist for one reason and one reason only, and it's to make a profit. And they want to make as much of a profit as they possibly can. Now, one of the ways of increasing profit is by decreasing wages. They want to pay you as little as they can so they can make as much money as they can for themselves and for their investors. That's how it works. And that's why unions are important, because they're the only ones that can make a change to that, because you need organized groups to fight for you.
To do it between him and his son. They get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so low?
I mean, like, his son is going to jail, just so you know. Hunter Biden was convicted. But the money from Ukraine thing, that was known to be false. It was debunked ages ago.
To this one, that one, Ukraine, China. Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million?
What is he talking about?
This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
He's just lying. Don't copyright me. I know, not word music, but still. Like, it's... Okay, please go away, you bot. I think that this has been pretty good, honestly. I didn't like how we were going in the very beginning, but Kamala Harris has done a good job since.
You've heard
Statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors.
I'm never going to get over how much I hate the term opportunity economy.
We can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms.
Kamala, we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. Nobody could touch us in terms of military combat. take nukes out of the equation. There is not a military on Earth, a country on Earth that is anywhere close to our level of our power level, for lack of a better word. They're it's I don't know. Look, I just wanted to say this closing statement from her is coming off so sane and personable that I think this wins the debate alone. You just take everything else out. If we just listen to their closing remarks, Kamala Harris wins by 50 miles because when we get to Trump's, it's just going to be unhinged.
Including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris,
The
thank you.
empathy
President
sounds
Trump.
very good.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that,
here we
she's
go.
going to do
Unhinged
all these
rant.
wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it?
She's not the president.
She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border.
She
They've
is
had
not the president.
3.5 years to create jobs and all the
They
things
have. They have. They've created many jobs. They have. They fixed the border too. Just not according to you. Shit. Did I hit mute? I did.
leave right now.
You know what? It was better with him on mute, but
The
whatever.
things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful
It's
White
not
House,
the
go
same
to the
agenda.
Capitol.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have similar agendas, but not the same. It's him saying, "Why haven't you done it?" does not like you can't equivocate the president's ability to make what they want happen and the vice president, especially without taking Congress into account. The only thing Joe Biden can do without Congress is an executive order to make a decision. Kamala Harris can't write an executive order. There's nothing she can do. All she can do is have her one vote in the Senate. That's it. Anubis. It's not a slim difference, it's a massive difference. Or sorry, the difference in the agenda, sure, but the difference in the ability to implement it, no. Joe Biden gets to decide how much of his agenda gets implemented, not Kamala Harris. She has no power to implement any of it.
Get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going
Continues
to
to
make
lie.
this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy
Germany fucked that up severely, and it was their own fault for so many reasons.
plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one
Not even
simple
what we're
question.
talking about.
Why didn't she do it? We're a
Because
failing
she's not
nation.
the president.
We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're
As
laughed
an
at.
American living abroad, yes, they are laughing at us all over the world. But you know why they're laughing at us? Is you, Donald Trump. Every single time I hear someone laughing about Americans being stupid, you are the one being referenced. I've lived on 4 continents, and every single one of them has been after you have become president. And that is the experience I've had in every foreign country that I have ever been to, talking about Americans with other foreign people. They all laugh at us because of you. You're the reason everyone thinks Americans are dumb. I mean, before you it was Bush, but you know.
all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third
Again,
world.
one that you have said that you don't support Ukraine in, you support Russia in. We have a war in the Middle East where both you and Kamala Harris have pushed, like, have went out of your way to try and look more pro-Israel, who's causing every bit of the conflict in the Middle East. Make no mistake, it's entirely them that is instigating conflict in the Middle East. These wars weren't there before. What do you mean? Ukraine was. Ukraine existed. Like, Russia invaded Crimea when Obama was president. They were still there. They were still fighting when Trump was president. What did he do? That's a stupid argument to make. And also, these are foreign countries behaving in ways that we don't have control over because they're our enemies. They're not our allies. We don't get to decide what Russia wants to do when they invade a country. Now, we do get to decide what Israel does, but clearly we don't want to. We like what they're doing. And again, both of them have said that they support Israel. They went out of their way to look more pro-Israel than the other. So it's really one other war we're talking about, which is Russia. Russia instigated this war on every possible level. And we support the opposing side, Ukraine, which he does not. That's not on us at all. It's not on Kamala Harris, it's not on Joe Biden, it's not on any of us. It's on him more than anything else. He's the one that supports Russia. It's on us for Israel. All of us, are complicit in the genocide now because, we our government is going to support it no matter what. So thanks to both of you for that. But blaming her for these wars, that's just, it's just factually incorrect and intentionally misleading. Like that's not even just a lie. It's a propagandized lie. It's a lie to make you want to believe something that just isn't true.
World war, and it'll be
Beyond
a war
the
like
lie in and of itself, like a greater picture, to be clear.
no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan.
Again, she didn't do anything. She wasn't the president.
What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country.
This is again a
the
lie.
worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here.
Good place to stop. Perfect. Now, it's no coincidence Joe was president. What? Not that it's her, but no coincidence. What? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. What do you mean? Not that it's her, but no coincidence Joe was president. What's that in reference to? Which conflict are we talking about here? Oh, okay. It is literally no coincidence that Joe Biden was president. This would have happened regardless of who was president. Israel let Hamas attack them so that they could justify the genocide and the annexation of Gaza and the West Bank, as they're trying to currently do. And Russia was already in the process and had been speaking of their right, their blood and soil rights to Ukraine well before Joe Biden was president. They were in Crimea. They went into Crimea with the justification that the Crimean people wanted to secede from Ukraine and come to Russia, that this was blood and soil belonged to Russia, that Ukraine was all Russian. They've been saying this for years. These things would have happened regardless. Now, what I want to talk about is what we ended the debate on really quickly. Look, it seems like there was less wars under Trump, because actually, I'm not even sure there were. If we're talking about worldwide wars, there might not have been. But It doesn't matter whether there was or wasn't. I'm not going to bother looking it up because it's irrelevant right now. It doesn't matter if there was more wars under this president versus that president if neither of those presidents started those wars. It only matters with Israel. We're not responsible for Ukraine. We're not responsible for the war in Myanmar either. I mean, there's a civil war happening in Myanmar. Neither of them mentioned it because, Asian brown people, they don't care about, but, well, not they, but Trump doesn't care about. And it wasn't relevant enough for Harris to mention it, especially because it would just give Trump more fuel. His claims are just nonsense. They're irrelevant, they're bullshit, and they don't actually add up. They don't rationally make sense. Um, What's worse is the thing that he ended the debate on is the millions and millions of immigrants that he claims are criminals that he wants to deport. Do you understand what the deportation of, let's go with the base number of 11 million. He says 20 to 25. Do you know what deporting these people would be like? Because they're in America, they're in the states, right? And they're scattered out everywhere, all across in every state. Even the moderator asked, "Is this going to involve law enforcement going door to door?" He didn't answer that because you know why? To have a mass deportation operation, which by the way is number one on his policy agenda that he has put out. Like you can go read it. Number one in big caps letters is the largest deportation operation in American history. Would involve police going door to door looking for immigrants, arresting them. It would involve camps to detain these people because not all of them are from the same country. Some of them need to go different. You can't just pick them up and deport them the same day. Remember, during the last Trump administration, we had children in cages that were separate from their parents because we didn't know what to do with them while we were trying to figure out how to deport people. There were literally children in cages, which would happen again, by the way. It would be literally Nazi shit. I'm not even exaggerating. It would take trains and camps to deport all of these people. Trains, planes, and camps. You can't, move a mass amount of people across the country very easily. That would require trains. We need to store these people somewhere while we do the bureaucracy of where the fuck are they going to go. That's camps. This is Nazi shit. Beyond that, the effect of losing 10 to 20 million Americans, most of which do work, would be ruinous for the economy. Immigrants pay taxes, but they also work. Most immigrants, especially the undocumented ones, work in the food industry, the manufacturing industry, and the service industry. Almost 80% work in agriculture. Can you think what would happen if we deported 80% of the people in charge of growing our food? Do you understand what that would do to the food prices at the supermarket, for one? Let alone the amount of food available on the shelves? Sure, okay, we'll import it. Again, makes it go up. Especially with these new tariffs that he wants to put in. Another increase. It would make everything, more expensive for you. It would weaken the dollar internationally. The stock market would plummet, which again is just hype and vibe based anyway, because it's not real. It wouldn't do anything beneficial. Crime would not go down, it would go up. Because when crime goes up? When people can't afford things. That's when crime goes up. The poorer people are overall, I'm not saying that poor people commit more crimes, but the poorer people are overall, the more crime that happens. Because people need to buy food, people need to feed their families, their children, they need to buy clothes, they need to go to work. Money affects all of these things, and the poorer you are, and the more likely it is that you're unable to meet these criteria, meet these standards, the more likely you are to do something like, turn to drinking to make yourself feel better, and then you drink a little bit too much, and now you're an alcoholic, and now you're committing crime. Or you do drugs, like one or the other. Poverty on a systemic scale leads to increase in crime. Poverty in general does not equivocate higher rates of crime, but that is what happens, And the mass deportation of immigrants from the United States will result in mass poverty for anyone that is the middle class, anyone that is in the bottom 3 to 4 tax brackets would experience an increase in crime, increase in costs of living for literally everything, there would be no benefit of this. And beyond that, also, right wingers also love to talk about the birth rate, especially when it refers to something like abortion. They'll bring it up, like especially the Nazi-esque ones on Twitter. The only reason that the United States population hasn't been declining is because of immigrants. So we're just we're gonna become Japan if we do this. Japan or South Korea. That's what they did. They didn't like immigrants, and now South Korea and Japan are essentially dead countries. Their citizens aren't fucking. They can't afford to. That's the thing. Is if you want more people to have kids, you have to make it cheaper for them to have kids. And none of this makes it cheaper to have kids. Every single plan, every single part of Trump's plan that he put out would harm you. It would harm you, Anubis. It wouldn't. Again, I'm gonna reiterate this. Immigration is good for the economy. Immigrants work. Immigrants pay tax. Immigrants commit less crimes than U.S. citizens in general, naturalized or born citizens. Immigrants commit less crime, undocumented and documented. Less crime. Have for a very, very long time. Crime overall is going down. There is no migrant crime wave. What else is there? Oh yeah, they're not the ones smuggling the drugs into the country. It's American citizens. Just like think about this for half a second, right? If you're a fucking drug cartel boss and you want to send, I don't know, drugs into the United, we're talking about fentanyl. You want to send, I don't know, 5 kilos of fentanyl into the U.S. Are you going to give it to the undocumented immigrant who's going to try and, cross the border illegally and sneak your shit in, and is much more likely to be scrutinized, caught, arrested? Or are you going to give it to Kelly, the white lady who's went down to Tijuana with her friends and realized that she lost a bunch of money and I don't know, she needs help, and will be significantly less scrutinized when crossing the border because she's a white lady and a U.S. citizen? Those are the most likely cases of drug smuggling, according to the Department of Homeland Security, the DEA, the FBI. Illegal immigrants are not bringing fentanyl across the border. Every single thing that Trump has said is a lie. I mean, he defended January 6th, said it was a peaceful protest, not an insurrection. He claimed that he was good on the economy, that inflation was as high as it's ever been, and that when he had the best economy ever. Both of these facts are false. What else did he say? All of the immigration stuff were lies. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about because he doesn't have any actual policy positions that he can say to the American people. It's not like he wasn't standing there just complaining and whinging and dodging questions because he didn't know the answer. That's not what was happening. He didn't answer the questions, and he was dodging and he was complaining the entire time because if he had actually answered the questions, everyone would hate him. His positions, his plans are unconscionable. They're unpopular. Like, if you look at polling for abortion, like the Pew polls, hold on, let me pull one up. Public polling on abortion from 1995 to 2024. 63 say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. Most of the country is in favor of abortion rights. Now, obviously, the white evangelical Protestants are the lowest supporting group, want it actually illegal in all or most cases. The white non-evangelical Protestants are a bit better on the topic. Black Protestants, Catholics, and the religiously unaffiliated. It's really just the white evangelical Protestants that give a shit. Not that give a shit, but that want it to be illegal, that care about people having abortions to the point where it makes them uncomfortable. Obviously, by political party and ideology, that changes. Even most men, the majorities of both men and women, favor abortion rights. Race doesn't play a difference. Ethnicity doesn't play a difference. It's just religion. Even age. Most age, all age brackets too. Education level, all of them. It's just white evangelical Protestants. Those are the only group. Oh, sorry, and the conservative leaning Republicans, that too. I skipped over that one because it's kind of essentially the same as the other graphs. But no other group is in favor of restricting abortion. And Donald Trump was saying that this has been like people have wanted this for decades. We're looking at decades. 1995. This is my entire lifespan. I was born in 1995. For my entire lifespan, the amount of American adults who thought that abortion should be legal in all or most cases has never dipped below 50%. Has never been more people think that it shouldn't than it should. Ever. It's just never happened. Sorry, I didn't even realize I had the screen up. I had myself on full screen. Never. 1995 to 2024. Again, religious affiliation is the only factor that gives someone the opinion of abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. Well, that and being a Republican. Wealth, class, ethnicity, gender, age, none of these made a difference. So again, lies. All Donald Trump had to say this entire time was lies and whinging and complaining. He looked incredibly weak. I think Kamala Harris kind of won the debate, like pretty well, honestly. I think she knocked it out of the park towards the end. Isn't that right, Mr.